So again, we like to at least share our link to the website. Keep in mind that we also represent Transformation Experts as our main sponsor. We give back to the community, but we also offer great certification classes. So if you're interested in any kind of agile certification, and I know there's going to be some coaching certifications, maybe Veronica's built out some additional things that you guys might want to participate as well. So those are great opportunities for you to learn and grow. Okay, and we don't just leave it at that. We also help you and coach you every week. All right, so please join us on Saturday. Neilu, please put the link on the chat. Please do me a favor. Just click on that link. Make fun of our website. I need some feedback. We've been revising that website for over 2 months now. We need your feedback. Oh, it's working, or Rick, you're headed down the wrong path. Take a look at it. Again, we have our events there. And probably we should be offering also some discounts to the upcoming class. We do have an upcoming class of the Certified Agile Leader. That's the big one coming up on Saturday. So if you're interested, please reach out to me so I can get you a discount and get you in that class. All right. Now let's get the party started. Veronica, when did we meet? When was the first time we actually met? Because I'm trying to remember the actual date, because it was a while back, but I can't remember.
I know. I was actually thinking about when we started the Agile community in Southeast Florida, right? How many?
What was the first day we actually met? Do you remember that day?
It was at a conference, that event that all of us got together and we decided to create a community.
Members.
Yes.
And it was funny because that post that I had on LinkedIn, when I was like, okay, I have another journey. I don't know if you remember, it was in New Orleans at the Scrum Alliance event. I don't know if you saw that post of mine where it's so funny how when all of us that are in the Agile community, there is so much truth to it. It's small and you never know when you're going to run into someone. And Rick and I ran into each other in New Orleans, I mean. And, but yeah, gosh, I mean, how many years has that been now?
It's too long, too much to count. Let's just
I left Florida, come back to Florida, moved around in Florida.
Do I always have to be everybody's memory around here? The date you're thinking about is 2013.
Is it?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun. So
I know, too much fun.
So excited to have you speak today. Really excited about your coaching journey, right? Because we are all facing, dealing with coaching at different levels and the stress and the anxiety. So I'm really, really excited to hear your journey and how you've expanded from coaching agile teams and maybe expanding other, your whole coaching people rather than just teams, right? So I'm really eager. So with no further ado, Veronica Stewart, take it on.
Hi, everyone. So before I actually jump in, we're going to do a quick exercise. I typically do this beforehand, but it's going to put us in the learning state. It's called Hack-A-Lao. It's a huna from Hawaii. It's called with open meditation. And it's a great thing if you're taking an exam or if you need to focus. And so we're all here to learn, right? So let's get our Hack-A-Lao on. And so it's so simple. You can do this with your teams and group of people. And what you want to do is stare in front of you, go up about 30 degrees. And what we start to do is start to see through our peripheral vision. And you start to hear things, maybe behind you, on the side of you, and perhaps maybe you're seeing things. And you can do this for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And believe it or not, this is a form of meditation. And it's called Hack-A-Lao, their learning state. And so now it actually opened up our subconscious so we can have better focus and memory, believe it or not, which is what meditation does. Now, I'll share just a quick visual of what that looks like. Oh, who's that cutie? I hear a cutie. And here. All right, so those of you that can see, can you see my screen that I'm sharing?
We can see
Okay.
each other. Yeah.
All right, so that is what Hakulau is. So you have your foveal vision, but then when you go into that state, it'll actually allows you see that peripheral. So you can Google Hakulau, and there's lots of videos on how to do that, but you can have fun that with your teams, especially when you are trying to be in a learning state. I do it a lot before I start talking because it gets me in a better state. So I thought we'd start out with that. It's fun. But here's the thing. Problems are gifts. And another thing is we create our own economy. Now, these are two things that Tony Robbins said, which I joined the 5-day New World Challenge a couple weeks ago, even did the VIP pass. And these two things stuck out to me because a lot of times we approach problems, not necessarily see them as gifts, right? And what does create your own economy have to do with it? Well, everything. I think a lot of us have learned in 2020, and some of you are job hunting today, is that we need to start owning our future. And creating your economy, as he talked about, was really owning your value prop. What kind of value are you bringing to the table? And so we begin. Problems.
Oh, Veronica, quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something. Are you sharing your screen or something?
Yeah, I'm sharing.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
let
you're
me-
sharing your Zoom.
All right, hold
Mike?
on here.
Yeah, you're sharing your
There
Zoom.
you go.
There you go. There you go. Awesome.
We were lost. We were like, okay, we're looking,
What
but
happened?
All right. You're gonna see my visual again because you're missing the magic here. So I'm connecting your visual. Those of you that are visual learners, and we're going to talk about that later on today, is problems are gifts and creating your own economy. And this thing is going to run through today is why this all ties together. Now, here's some examples of a couple of problems. We got relationships, leadership, bosses, children, dating, right? All types of problems out there, both personally and professionally. The one thing that we have in common with all is it involves people. It involves people to figure out a solution. It could be individual or it could be a group of people, right? Now we have, some of you probably have seen this, right? In some company cultures that I've been, they don't even like the word problem. They're like, no, it's a challenge. No, it's an opportunity. But ultimately, it's kind of a path. Problems make challenges and challenges make opportunities. But we start here and we end here. Ultimately. Now, in 2021, the companies are looking at employees and they're starting to assess, in truth, of what skill sets that they need in order to help them solve unforeseen challenges in the year of 2021 or in the future. And here are the things that they talked about. Problem solving and cognitive thinking, which includes critical thinking, cognitive flexibility, becoming comfortable with ambiguity, resilience, all right? And being a self-starter. But here's the thing. All the skill sets in the world aren't going to mean anything if you don't have this and you don't have this. Because that is where the magic lies. That's what drives the great skill sets. Your ability to actually do something about it, and here is to effectively communicate and work with others. And so today we're going to dive into of how to solve great problems, but also what does mindset and communication have to do with it? And I say everything. Those of you that have already have introduced myself, now I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story, as I know Rick wanted me to talk about it. I call myself a mindset and success coach, but ultimately my beginning started out long time ago before I even finished college. I started to realize that I had a thing about breaking systems. I graduated from high school in 3 years because I figured out a loophole to their system. I figured out to come to Florida and start teaching because I figured out a loophole to the system that I didn't need student teaching. I said, give me a degree and I start. And I continue down this path to always question everything and the systems that we have. Now, I started out as a teacher because I love people. I love to see the potential in everyone. I became an agile coach later on. And then I decided, you know what? I'm burnt out. And so in 2020, most of you were thinking about your life and what was more important to you and what started to matter. Well, I've been on the road for 5 years. I was traveling, living in hotels, probably not sleeping very well. No, I wasn't sleeping very well, but I also had a problem. And what I challenged was that when you go through an organizational transformation, I started to question that, where honestly, I thought the system was flawed. See the trend, me always challenging systems, where I started to believe that if you had choice to want to change, and again, creating your own future, see where I'm going with this on creating your economy, is that what would it look like if we had personal transformation in the forefront? And so in truth, this is where I am today. I believe you'll yield better results in personal transformation than you will in an organizational transformation. There's a reason why it's failed all these years. And that's where I am today. Now I could be wrong, I could fail, but I'm willing to just explore it, just like I did when I decided to start teaching without student teaching and not have that certificate. And I was okay. So we'll see where it goes. Now, right now, I'm in my pivot in truth. And I talk about helping individuals increase their value by thinking and authentically acting like an entrepreneur. And the reason why I say this is all those skill sets that I just showed a minute ago, there's a common theme around it, is that people that actually think and act like entrepreneurs have those skill sets. And the ones that are successful actually have the mindset and the communication ability, because that's what actually gets them to have successful results. And so that's why I say I like to help people think and act like entrepreneurs, because there's something magic in that secret sauce that they have, in truth. Now, let's talk about wrong problems. How many of you have ever done anything that you've started to go down a path and create a solution, but then you realize you were actually working on the wrong problem? Any of you guys ever had that problem? Problem? Well, there's a reason for it. And this is kind of where talking about reframing. Any of you heard of reframing? Reframing can mean a lot of different things. And one of the things when it comes to reframing is how you look at a problem. Where are you linear and stay within your container, or do you look outside? And this outside takes a different perspective. This different perspective could be the way that you believe in what's true. It could be you needing someone else to help you see things differently. And this is reframing the problem. Now, there's a book. Those of you that have not seen this, it came out in 2020. I highly advise you to buy this book. And he has a great exercise for all of you to do, where he has you do 2 projects. One is a personal project, and the other one is a business professional project, because he wants you to experience it both ways, because you think about things differently. But in the end, we're all humans, and we should learn how to solve problems no matter what, right? And in the reframing, where I'm jumping to is rethinking the goal, right? And examining these bright spots, looking in the mirror. And you're probably wondering what this is. Now, this is probably a whole event on its own that we dive into this book and this canvas. But my point is that there are people that are out there that get this and know this, that innovation, And great things don't happen by thinking linearly. It's all about thinking and reframing things. And that's the gist of this. You like that, Marcella, right? And some of us have a very natural way of doing it. So I know I've measured myself that I'm a game changer strategist. I see possibilities. Rick, I know you are one too, because we measured you. And we look at things differently. And that's where I don't always think that I know everything. I know that I need help to reframe and get a different perspective. I know that. I would never think that I'm the only one that can always come up with the best problem. And that's a humbling mindset feeling, right? That I don't need to have to solve everything. I'm okay with that. Now I have a little fun thing. Any of you guys ever seen the Memento movie? Any of you guys? So I'm going to play just a little bit of clip just to remind some of you when it comes to our reality and how we think of things. That's why I picked this movie.
At its most simplistic, Memento is a revenge thriller about Leonard, an insurance claims investigator, looking for the man who raped and murdered his wife. Only he has a disability.
Since my injury, I can't make new memories.
This allows for what some may call a gimmick, with scenes in reverse order. But I would argue Memento is one of the greatest explorations of subjective reality. While some films can literally show first person, no other film questions reality quite like Memento does. Nolan asks us, what is real? While another philosophical movie asks that question, Memento feels far more plausible and unsettling. It plays on our perception of the world around us.
Memory can change the shape of a room, it can change the color of a car.
It questions what we trust, what we accept as real, and what's real despite our awareness of it. When a character speaks confidently, explains things confidently, we believe in their authority.
Memory's unreliable. No, really. Memory's not perfect, it's not even that good. Ask the police. Eyewitness testimony is unreliable.
It's not until the end when we find out how ill-equipped Leonard is to handle an amateur investigation.
And memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation, they're not a record. And they're irrelevant if you have the facts.
Leonard's illness and his own naivete changes his facts all the time. Besides intentionally writing the final false fact against Teddy, Leonard changes his mind in the middle of a home tattoo and changes tattoo fact 5 at the unheard suggestion of a stranger on the phone. Leonard trusts his vague notes about Natalie even though she's using him to her advantage. His photo of her is so shoddy that he doesn't even recognize her in a scene.
Natalie.
You don't remember me.
He forgets his keys and loses his pen. He forgets what his clothes look like. In fact, he's not even wearing his own clothes through the movie. He's adopted an entirely new identity, from the clothes to the car. When Leonard finds out Teddy's real name from his license information, he says to himself, "This guy told me his name was Teddy." Leonard has no idea what Teddy told him, only that his picture has Teddy's name on it. The film plays on an audience's trust, assumptions, and expectations of a reliable narrator. Nothing more than vague tattoos and everything to do with his personal vengeance. The certainties we take for granted are taken from Leonard, and he's left with his own temporal reality from moment to moment.
My solution to telling the story subjectively was to deny the audience the same information that the protagonist is denied. Effectively tell the story backwards.
This is the closest way we
Now, how many of us created our own realities about the information that we see? How many of us our truth might not necessarily be the fact, might be like Memento. I loved this example because it starts to show what I'm about to introduce when information comes into us and how we perceive it. Perception is projection and cause versus effect. This is something that I say all the time. And I get it from the neuro-linguistic programming language called NLP, where they say this is part of their model. And what you perceive is what you project. You're at cause for what you do. I'm going to repeat that. You are at cause. Because at the end of the day, how you react to what you perceive is your choice, isn't it? So mindset. This is where it falls in. So if we are working on a problem and we're trying to reframe, could our realities be impacted by the way that we think and approach a problem? Could we use other people's perspective to maybe see beyond the frame that we create, the stories that we tell ourselves in the head, or the limitations that we don't allow ourselves to stretch beyond for whatever reason? Thomas Edison said this, and I loved finding this quote, because a lot of people, when they hear the word subconscious, kind of get all freaked out and they think it's like some mind control. Well, if this guy could say it, there's some validity there, because this was a smart scientist. And he said, never go to sleep without a request to your subconscious. So if he was thinking that, can't be too bad, is it? Now, the brain. Now, I was a science teacher, so I get a little geeky on this. I can't help it. Where our brain, our thinking mind, and if you look at this vision, we're going to have a couple of different layers. You're going to look in the middle there where it talks about your conscious. And this is where you make reactions consciously. But look at 95% is your subconscious, which means the things that you're thinking in your head directly has a correlation to the way you consciously act and react. And you don't even know it. Now that is mind-blowing. Now here's a couple of things. So in our conscious mind, that's where you analyze, that's where you think and plan. That's actually where your short-term memory is. Now, I don't know about you, but I was fabulous in college with my short-term memory. I don't even think I remember half my classes. Any of you guys have that problem? Because I know I did. Hey, I just cared about passing. Well, your long-term memory is actually in your subconscious mind. So believe it or not, the thing that actually drives your subconscious is actually that things that sit in your long-term memory. What could be your long-term memory is your experiences, your emotions and feelings, habits and patterns, relationship patterns, creativity, your development stages, and etc. These are all the things that, believe it or not, drive your conscious reaction, and you might not even realize it. Now, how many of you have heard of emotional intelligence? That's pretty a hot topic these days, right? And self-awareness. Part of the process is consciously starting to realize unconsciously of the things that you're telling yourself, which we call self-talk, that creates those stories in our head. Now, I don't know if all of you are aware, we have like billions of bits of information that come in our heads. And we're like this supercomputer in our brains. And while it's coming in, we have these filters. And in these filters, we either generalize things, we distort things, or we delete things. So generalization would be everyone. Everyone knows, right? Everyone who. Or distortion could be, she thinks I'm mad. Does she? Are you a mind reader? Or value judgments is another one. Or deletion, where you delete information that ends up being your story. These types of filters, as that information crosses, is different for everyone. And of course, you know, I have a video for this. Now, believe it or not, that we have about 5 or 9 chunks of information at a time. And this is why that sometimes when we have so many things, you know, we always talk about an agile world, like there's no such thing as multitasking. And just imagine when our brains have so much things on our mind. So these days, I think we've been tested to the limits of all the stresses that we have, both personally and professionally. This is why I believe, and I talk about that a lot on my Game Changing Work show with my co-host, that there's no difference between personal and professional. We bring the human to work. And this is why it's so important to realize that, because those 5 or 9 chunks, which one's winning that day? Now, as you process the ones that actually make the cut, you start to create your internal representation, which is related to your state. And your state is how you are going to physically react. And this is where the emotions come in, right? And that when I talked about cause and effect, right then at that moment, 3 people can be in a room. And I loved it. Tony actually talked about this, where he was in a business deal and they were pretty much getting hoodwinked and taken advantage of. One of his partners was very calm and just said, "Oh, I'm peeved." And Tony Robbins was like, "What do you mean peeved? I'm mad. They're like taking advantage of us." And then he had the other business person where he was like, had to calm him down. Like, you know, he was going postal. And you had 3 people that had the same type of information, but was acting differently. And his point in the story was that we had a choice on how we react. And going back to problems, we have a choice on how we want to deal with the situation. Period. What do we do? And the stories that we tell ourselves could determine the way that we approach a problem and what solutions we choose. So how many of you in a business context can't tell me that you've never been in a room where you are working on a problem and they decided that was the problem and then worked on that particular solution because that was where their narrow vision is? And maybe you're one of those that were sitting in the side of the room going, "I don't know why we're doing this. Why are they choosing to do this?" You know, might be because they were comfortable. That was the way that they wanted to handle it. Maybe that was, you know, all they could see and what made sense to them. Now, a lot of us that I would call us game changers that see beyond and see the possibilities, it's very painful to sit in these types of situations because we don't think in a box. We think of possibility. We think of all the different things. But if we don't have the voice to speak up, right, the state we're in and the action that we have, we might be the silent one in the room and things keep going. And then we create a solution that may not be the best one. Any of you guys ever had that? Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this video, but I think it is freaking fabulous. And this proves how different. So I'm going to do a couple of pauses while we watch it because I'm kind of curious what you guys see. Now, you guys can see my share right now. I want to make sure before I hit the play button. Okay.
I always like to come out
Hold on.
more than,
Let me forward it to the
except for the people.
interesting part. Okay.
They're happy. They just didn't get tickets in time. They're happy. But there are still things that divide us. And today I want to talk about the biggest controversy since this dress. You remember this? All right, now I personally see a gold and white dress. How many people see a gold and white? All right. How many people say a blue and white dress? Just screaming doesn't make more of you.
Did anyone ever see any blue and white? No? Interesting. That is where we are all seeing the same thing, but visually, someone sees a different color. How many of you have ever been in that situation? It's a blue dress. What do you mean blue? That looks green. Now check this out.
Just to arm up help. All right. How many of you have heard of this Laurel and Yanny thing? All right. Not the comedy duo. They stopped touring years ago. The old Yanny and Laurel. All right. I'm talking about the viral sound that is tearing the nation apart. Listen carefully to this, and then you're going to tell me if you hear Laurel or Yanny.
Laurel. 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 Laurel.
Okay, how many people hear Laurel?
Anyone
How
hear
many people
Laurel?
hear Yanni?
Yanni?
Again, yelling does not make more of you. You still are not as many people as the correct people, which are Laurel. It is Laurel. It's Laurel. Now,
Crazy, isn't it?
Laurel. It's so easy. It's Laurel. So more of you hear Laurel. The people who hear Yanni, I'm going to have to ask you to leave because it's crazy though, isn't it? I mean, we can hear the exact same thing and then hear something completely different. How many of you have husbands and you tell them to take the trash out and put the dishes away and they hear have a beer and take a nap? Totally the same thing and yet they hear it. So this morning I heard something that blew my mind even more. Okay, I'm going to play a clip. Listen carefully to this. All right, now I'm going to play a different clip.
The juice of lemons makes fine punch.
Now I'm going to play the first clip you heard. It's like a horror movie, isn't it?
That is scary.
Isn't that crazy? Now, this proves perception is projection of what is actually happening. And there's a lot of things that are out there that you can probably watch in videos and have fun with it, but how many things that when we start to approach a problem, we go straight in with just our initial perception. Now, one of the great things in the book of What's Your Problem that I shared, he talks about working with other people and the benefit of it. And part of doing those personal and business projects is when you go to reframing is looking in the mirror, you know, doing other things to work with other people to give you a different perception about your problem, because Yanni or Laurel or gold dress or blue and white dress, right? I thought that was quite interesting. I just got fun with those. Now, we're going to talk about our preferred representation system. And we all have a different way of doing things. This is probably a talk on its own. I actually did this with my niece. She started getting into real estate. She's a realtor now. And I was like, oh, Lauren, you know, everyone, when they come to a decision, it's actually quite different. And so I actually went through the process of asking her how she makes a decision in buying a pair of clothes. And I proved that to her. And here, your visual representation could be visual. So some of you might even already know that you are, right? If you are a very visual person on the things that you do, or you are auditory. How many of you talk to yourself? How many of you actually prefer to listen to something versus watching something sometimes because you can think better? I actually had a coach that preferred to talk to somebody on the phone because watching them actually bothered them. They couldn't think. And auditory digital, which is me, think, making sense of things, and then kinesthetic is feeling. Now, some of you are probably going, ooh, that sounds like me. And there's many ways that you can do a telltale sign. Like I said, this whole thing could actually even be a talk on its own. But here's a fun thing. Your speech patterns. I already talked about decisioning, gave the example of my niece, but also how you process information can be all related to your representational system. And so that's the part where I'm sharing with communication. There's a lot about communication, but I wanted to share a different way to look at it than what you normally think. And here's some examples of words. And some of you probably might be resonating here. Do you use words like I see, I picture, imagine, or auditory? I listen, I sound, I want to be heard. Or kinesthetic, I feel, I want to get a handle on things. Or auditory digital, right? I want to understand, I think. Does that make sense? Do you want to know? Now, one of the cool things when it comes to I can't even say the word tonight, representational systems, is that when we're communicating with people and we're building rapport, and that's a whole other topic to talk about, is that the language that you use, and when you understand and listen to how they are talking, it helps you match them and build rapport. So the last thing that you want to do, if somebody's really talking in a way where they're talking about their feelings and kinesthetic, you don't want to come to the table and focus on visual. That's not going to connect them. So how many of you ever been in a situation where you are having a hard time connecting and they're not, they're not understanding what you're trying to explain? One trick to this is figuring out what type of words are the things that they're actually saying. Now, today we're obviously going to have a fun exercise. Of course, we got to do some activities, right? And we're going to find out what representational system that you guys are. And this is an activity that all of you can bring back with your teams and groups of people so you guys can get to know each other better. Because this is one way of many things when it comes to languages on effectively communicating and building better rapport with people. So, are you guys ready for the exercise? All right. So, I have the Google Doc. I don't know if you guys put it in the chat. And that Google Doc is actually an open link, so you guys can download it and save it. But what we're going to end up doing is, for each of the following statements, here's the Google Doc right here.
Yes, you also shared it in on the chat. Yeah.
And let me know before I jump into it that everyone has access, because I did create that as an open link. I want to make sure I don't have any technical difficulty. I tested it a couple times. Are we all good?
Can you put it in the link is not in the chat, just the document.
We need the link if it's a Google Doc, right?
Yeah, so what you want to do is open up like the Google Doc, and you can actually
is.
give it a copy, and then you can edit yourself when you do it.
Yep.
Cool.
So you want us to make the copy, not use the same document. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you won't be able to. It's view only,
Yeah,
so you will have to. Yeah, I did lock that down. I'm a little bit clever. So I'm gonna stop sharing this real quick here and open up. Hold on here. Get out of that. And I will share the document just so that we're all looking at the same thing right now. Hold on one second. So walking through this, can you guys see what I'm sharing?
Yes, we can see it, Coach.
Okay, cool. So on here, what you want to do is the first thing that is closest to describing you. So like the number one is, I make important decisions based on either your gut feeling. Is that most close describing you? Then you would put 4. Which way sounds the best? What looks best to me? Precise review and study of issues. So you want to rank it by those numbers. So those of you, it might look a little different to you of which one you're actually going to choose first, right? So if something's the least to you, the way that you would make an important decision, then you would put a 1 next to one of these. Anyone have any questions on that? Then as you guys are going through, step 2 is putting all your results in here. So you would have, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you have. And then once you see your results here, you will be able to fill it in and create the total number that you have. So if I have for all my V's in 1 and say that V equaled 3, I would put a 3 here. And so eventually you'll have a total number that you can calculate. So as you guys are working through, feel free to ask as you go. Typically, we're in a room in a group workshop setting where I would pass these papers around and people would be doing it. So I'll give you guys some time to kind of work through it, but shout out as you guys are have any questions while you're in it.
Veronica, it's one answer per question, right?
So every question you want to do all of these. So you will see it. It'll either look like this, right? Your answer. And then when I come down here, I'm going to want to put in everything that was a K for me, right? That best describes you. So if you have copying your answers on the previous page, number 1, you would have your KAVAD on there. Make sure that I didn't do anything wrong on that as you guys are filling it out. You know how you transpose something that is a paper thing, but I want to make sure that yeah, so it's literally, okay. Now that poll, if we probably want to put that up, those of you that complete it, what I'm curious is what you guys end up landing on, because what's going to end up happening is one of these, like for example, mine ended up being the highest. This might end up being 16, or this one might end up being 14, and this one might be 13, for example. I'm just making up these numbers. Whatever your highest one is your main representational system based on how you answered that. So if I go to number 1 here, just so that you guys have an example, I'm just filling this in case any of you are confused and you're too shy to tell me. That's how you do it. So I literally took number 1, how I answered it, right, based on these options. Then I literally did it 1, 3, 4, 2, what it was, and then I went here and took this and entered it across. And then you just do that for every single one, and then you add the numbers. So that's what we do. Let me know when anyone's finished yet. I'm curious of where we're starting to land. I can't see if we put a poll up yet. Is there a poll there?
I put the link on the chat for the poll, and
okay,
yeah, so everyone can, yeah.
And the reason why I'm interested in the poll, there is a statistic of what people are. And all of us in the room, and how many people that we have today is 26 people. What are we? Are we the statistic, or are we outside of that?
Done.
So far we got one person.
That's probably Marcelo.
No, I was done, but I have not described myself.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if do we land in the statistics or uniquely are we all landing in a certain thing? I always wonder about that when they make statistics.
Can you explain the last step?
Yeah. So what once you fill them all out, you're going to look up here and see how you did the numbering. And each one of them, you're going to come down here and literally
Wait. We're still
populate
showing the
what you
poll.
had.
You gotta go back and share your
What's
screen.
sharing?
Yeah, thank you, Connie.
Thank you. So everything that you add in here, you have like whatever answer you had, right? That you thought was closest, least, and what might have you. You're going to literally write what you had down in this section. Then you're going to take this section and you're going to work across from left to right and populate that number. So for example, in this example that I have here, my K is 1, so I put K1. My A is 3, so I put 3. And so on. Once you have each one of these filled in, then you're just going to add the math and come up with your total at the bottom. The one that is the highest based on this exercise is your highest representational system. Your preferred representational system.
My answer doesn't surprise me.
Mine didn't either.
Yeah, it's really I could have sworn I was something else, but it doesn't surprise me.
Now it can be situational, and that's what we'll talk about. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that decision making. But I wanted us to go through it and put a meat on the bone, so then it kind of ties everything together. This is when it comes to making a decision. There's actually a process that you can do to figure this out with people. This is something that I've learned, especially when I'm learning a lot more about sales these days. And the more that you find out how someone makes a decision, it will help them get there. So imagine all the different things when you're in a meeting is how you can better understand people's preferred representational, but also their decisioning, how they make a decision and the questions that you can ask to actually get there. So far we have a lot of auditory and visual. No kinesthetic or auditory digitals yet? I guess I can put me in there.
Okay, I finished mine, but I did it on the sheet. I didn't do it on the poll everywhere, I guess.
Oh, so yeah, we're trying to figure out what everyone is. Just out of curiosity. I figured the poll would get it faster to get the consensus.
So you're ranking them from like highest total to lowest total, right?
So yeah, the one that you see with the highest number is your preferred representational system.
Okay, how about if I got like 2 that are the same and one that's just at least a number under? So I'm like 3. I'm like 3 even.
Well, then that probably is where you switch back and forth and it's situational, even more so. And yeah, we're going to talk about that. So as you guys are putting it together, I'll share this statistic. So statistically, 40% people are visual and 40% are kinesthetic. That's why I'm surprised we don't have any C's. 20% is auditory and 20% is auditory digital. That's why I'm surprised. Like when I see auditory, a lot of you that have filled that out.
But wait a second, that adds up to 120. If you go 40, 40, 20, 20.
Okay, that's not right, Rick. You can't use two browsers.
Gotcha. I came out. I didn't do it in the poll, but I came out with auditory.
Oh, then I meant 10%, Saba.
Oh.
Sorry,
Yeah.
thanks.
It's 10%.
I have the K. I'm A and AD the same, and then just one number less in the K. But like auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory are like the same.
Wait,
Just
wait. So you're evenly balanced?
I am. I guess I guess I'm not that visual. Visual was my
Rick, man,
least.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
What?
God, she's well balanced, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. I thought I'd be more visual, but no, yeah, I'm auditory and auditory digital the same. And then like both of those came out to 14, and then kinesthetic is 13. So, and then visual is 9. That was crazy.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Wow. And getting back to, if I show I'm going to get back to the words here. Right, if I share my screen real quick.
It's interesting. These were random questions, Veronica, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no like steadfast rule, because there's a couple of things that you can actually know. I don't know if you guys, familiar with eye patterns, and there's actually 2 types. There's reverse and normal. And that's something actually I've learned as well. Some people, especially if you have English as a second language and you learn about eye patterns, people will end up having to translate first and then go into what they do. So I've actually learned that process too, where people move and what might have you. But this is what people say. And so when we talk about representational systems, there's a lot of meat around the bone about this subject. And this is just one thing I'm sharing with all of you. And it's, start paying attention, have fun with this, of the words that people use when they're discussing things. Because you're going to start to pick up, are they more visual in what they're talking about? So like Regina, if we're probably talking about a situation, I probably will start wanting to listen where you're going. If you're going more visual, then I'm going to want to use more visual type language with you, because I know that's going to connect and resonate with you based on what I either am trying to teach or I'm trying to get to for you to understand in a conversation. So think about like negotiation or decision making, if you are, or building rapport. The one thing that you want to do is, we learn about mirror and matching. You want to use the same kind of language that the other person uses. That's going to create a connection. There's other ways too, obviously physiology, which is a whole other exercise on its own, but that language, that's a great thing to start. So imagine all of you working with teams, or if you are talking to anybody, a leader, or anybody, or a coach, that you go into an organization and you start to pay attention to the words they use, you can jump into the conversation and start matching those words, right? So say for example, they're like me and they're auditory digital, and they start talking about things making sense. And they're talking about, thinking and what might have you. I'm going to want to stay in that zone with them, because I know that's the way it's going to resonate when I'm having a conversation with them. The last thing I'm going to ask them to do is imagine something. It's not where they go. So decisioning. Now this is a fun one. Decisioning patterns can be very different for other folks. And part of that process, when you can ask a simple question. So say for Regina, would you like to, how much more time do we have?
2 hours.
10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
We might not have enough time before this, but if I was to ask you how you make a purchase decision, like to buy a piece of clothing, as you're shopping, what's the first thing that you look for?
Colors.
So you're looking at colors. What's the next thing that you do before you make a decision to buy something?
How it makes me feel.
And after you feel, how do you know that you're going to go up to the register and it's a done deal? So if you had a decision between two shirts, how are you going to make that decision between the two?
Gut feeling.
So if I heard correctly, you see two shirts, you're going to go for the colors, what you visually see. And the second thing is how they feel. Now, let's explore that a little bit. Is it how you try it on? Do you try it on? Like, what do you do when it comes to feeling?
No, how it makes me feel, not physically, but like if it makes me happy, if it's something that makes me happy. It's not a physical feeling. It's more like, do I like it? Does it make me happy? That type of feeling.
Now, if both of them make you happy, how do you make a decision between two things that make you happy?
It's gut feeling. It's like my first reaction. I'm very like that, or I might just buy both because I like them both. Yeah, you know.
So
But I'll make an instant decision like that, like on a gut feeling, like this one makes me happier or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your decisioning process, it's visual and kinesthetic. Now, when I asked my niece how she made her decision, she went criteria. She had a checklist. She actually likes certain tops a certain way, and that's what she was looking for. The next thing is she likes how she can imagine it on her. The next thing, when it comes to price and cost, for her to make a decision is there's around that. So she likes to make sense of and do an analysis in her hair to make sense if it was worth buying. So she actually does a auditory, she does a visual, and then she does an auditory digital in her decisioning.
Well, Veronica,
But what was that? Where'd they go?
You're
Bill.
waking up, Bill.
Yeah, we can't hear Bill.
based on the product you're also looking at, so whether it's an expensive, depend on what you're purchasing, whether it's an expensive item or something inexpensive. So that's where I struggle with some of the questions. If I wanted to buy a car, for example, my analysis would be a lot different than buying something that's $3 or $4. That's more of a gut feel.
And that's where, depending on you're wanting to understand a person's decisioning strategy, because that's what you're trying to understand, you're going to want to use something similar. The closest thing so you can get an idea of their decision strategy. So for example, I'm on a sales call with you to buy my program and it's expensive. I'm going to ask you how you buy a car.
Right, exactly. And versus, and so that's where the questionnaire, I think I came up with different than I would have anticipated, because I was thinking about one thing and the question wasn't clear.
And this is just kind of one of those things. It's not a black and white, but it gets you to start thinking about people's different representational systems. And for me, I may be more visual before I start making sense of something. When I've actually done the test and they started doing my eyes, they started realizing that I like to imagine something first before I actually make sense of it. It was just something I started to notice. And there's no exact to it, to your point, Bill, but it's more about the awareness. Listen to what people are saying, right? Because you're not going to go test everyone. If you're talking in a hallway and you're having a conversation, this is your opportunity to have awareness of what other people are saying at the time and how you can quickly build rapport or connect with them to where maybe you're trying to get everyone to agree or see your point. And the last thing you want to do is lead in with something that they are not there in their representational system.
Yeah, agreed. And using examples and situationals when you're talking with somebody really helps.
Oh yeah.
Them understand and you to understand them.
And this is just one slice of the pie of just understanding the behavior and them and how people with their minds and how they think about it. Because the science behind it is when we are taking information and then processing it, that hits a lot of our subconscious. It's not the conscious that's sitting there, and that drives all of the behaviors. And so my point of a lot of what I was sharing today was all around just starting to be aware of how different it is, even with you, and in the way that you do things, and then what other people do, which could be, you guys could be sitting there in the same exact information in front of you, and it's so different. You're not even seeing it the same way, hearing it the same way, feeling the same way. That's huge. It was something that opened my eyes so much more, that my experience with my mother, stubborn old 75-year-old woman, you know, I love her to death, but she's stubborn. And because I'm now aware, she called me to ask for some help. And usually I get a little frustrated, right? She's kind of old school. She has her ways of doing things. I started doing this with her, and I started realizing the language she used. She was, you know, while she was asking for help, and I actually had a really great conversation with my mom. It wasn't like I was, you know, going against the grain with her, because I started to be aware of the language that she used. So try with it, have fun with it. That's my point. And it might open up a whole different world that you never realized with someone. Now, as I end with this today, I always have a lot of content out there. And I am in the process, I do have things in the works of when it comes to personal transformation and what I'm doing, but I'm kind of in that baking stage. But the one thing that you can do is follow me. I'm always out there. And I have 2 live events that I do every week. One is myself. I had to move it to 6 p.m. because my coaching program that I'm in, they ended up changing it on me. And so I had to change and adapt. So it's at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays now. I actually talked about the secret guide of the 6 principles of success yesterday. So you can catch the replay on my YouTube channel, Rethink with Veronica. Today, we had a special guest. We actually talked about the skill sets that I mentioned today in our talk, where we had Ashley Brundage. She is talking about diversity and inclusion, and she has a book and a whole program around empowering decisions. So you can catch that on the Game Changing Work Show. We do live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And yes, next week we are going to, oh, I love poking the bear. I'm a bear poker. What can I say? We always have topics that are fun. We are talking about why personal transformation yields better results than organizational transformation. Oh yeah, we're going there. And so that's going to be our show next week on there. So connect with me. Follow me on LinkedIn. Those of you that already are, you know that I'm there all the time putting content. And so you'll know what I'm going to be up and doing. So just kind of like a teaser, I've already talked to one CEO in a company here in Southeast Florida about my vision when it comes to personal transformation. And he was aligned in believing that people need to make a choice on what they want to do for their personal development and growth. And it's not so foreign. It is something where I highly encourage all of you to create your own economy and start taking ownership of your future, and don't rely on organizations to do it for you, because they are moving more towards those skill sets that I shared with you guys. And they are looking for people that have that entrepreneur mindset and ability to act that way, because it's the only way that it's going to take them forward. So you're either going to be relevant for the future, or you're going to end up being 2019. And the open to work on LinkedIn is probably people's biggest fear out there today. And what do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that paving for the future and having the things that people and companies need so you can be marketable? Or you want to stay safe and comfortable? I think we all know the answer to that, don't we? Now, all of you that are agile coaches out there, imagine how much easier it would be if people actually did this for themselves. And I'll leave it with that for you guys. And so, you guys have any questions? We'll open it up for conversation before we bid adieu.
When are you coming back?
Whenever you guys will have me.
She should be here every week. I don't know what, did someone questioned that?
Every
I
week.
come.
You're part of the team, right? Come on.
But
sorry,
that means that you and I, Rick, could just sit back in the bus. Her, Regina, that's it. The two of us sit back in the bus. I don't see the problem. There's no downside there.
Love it. All right. Do we
yeah,
have any
and
other?
I'm interested in all of your feedback. If this was an interesting topic for you, do you see the, you know, the opportunities out there for people to really start being in the driver's seat of their own change is my point.
Go ahead, Saba.
Veronica, I have a question for you. The self-assessment that we did, is that something that's ingrained in you, or can you actually train yourself to go from one representation to from one?
You know, I actually had this conversation with my pair coach today, and we're not sure what that answer is in truth, because we were like, what happens if you start being in touch with your more feelings when you start removing your limiting beliefs that might hold you back, right? I actually have a coaching client that she's kinesthetic, but she's not really good at expressing her feelings. And so I can't even do trigger exercises to help her work through her responses because she can't even name the emotion that she's having. And I kind of wonder, well, what happens if she can tap into that? You know, does things start changing? Is she going to be more visual, or, you know, because she can see things? And I'm going to ask my master trainer that question, and I'm going to get back to you on that, because we actually had that. The what if, could that change? Now, I'm kind of a firm believer, if you can train your subconscious to think and act differently, I'm going to say, why not? What do you guys think?
I believe that.
Because you change, right? So if you tap into your subconscious, which drives 95% of your conscious, and you start wanting to be more visual or what might have you, could that change? I don't know. Anyone want to try it?
Actually, I kind of want to try it. I want to take this test again, like say a year from now. I've already put it on my calendar.
Yeah, do it.
And I'm kind of curious, have you taken the test more than once? And what time elapsed between, and what were your results like?
Well, my co-host, Roxana, on the Game Changing Work Show, she actually takes it often. And because she wants to know if where her head is and where she's thinking at the moment, kind of like what Bill was talking about, is that going to change her results? Right. And so she actually does that based on where she is in that moment. And I believe perception, right, is projection. I think your results could vary, but I would say that my kinesthetic is the lowest. I could probably see my visual, and auditory digital is what teeters back and forth, because that is my nature.
Love it, love it. So I think I have the perfect ending to this. So Veronica, what we do at the end is we kind of have like a visual representation of, you know, how they enjoyed the session. But this time I want to actually change it a little bit. So you did an exercise, right? And I'm going to ask the question, how do you need to communicate? What style should I communicate to you? And you have to tell me in a non-verbal way, whether it's whether it's visual, whether it's hearing, whether it's connect. You got to tell me what your results were, but in a non-visual way. Okay. So for example, again, how would you like me to communicate with you? And how would you actually respond to that? Show me. Was your results visual? Was your results kinetic? Was your audio? Right? You're going to have to show me that visual thing. Okay. So we're actually taking a video of this, and we're going to create like a little LinkedIn post to this. Do you think it'll work, Veronica, or what do you think? Is this
I
gonna
think
work?
anything can work if we want it to make it happen.
I don't
Anything's
know.
possible,
First of all, I
right?
got to get all the cameras on. All the video cameras on, video cameras on, video cameras on, video cameras. Do you understand the exercise? Do you remember the results of what you did in your little exercise, right? Okay, Neilu, are you there?
Sounds like yes.
Do you think you can? You got the recording ready? Do you think you can make that happen, or do I need to do something on my side?
Nah, I got it. Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm just gonna ask, how would you like me to communicate with you? And then you guys, so it's 3-second recording. It's a 3-second recording. So make it interactive. Make sure you're pointing to whatever it is. All right. So Neilu, count it down, and I'm gonna say, how would you like me to communicate with you? And then
Okay.
you guys react.
So it's a 3, 2, 1.
How would you like me to communicate with you?